Welcome back to Talk Tensors, the show where we like to really dive deep into the latest and greatest in machine learning research. You know, we're always looking for those groundbreaking papers that are going to push the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
Absolutely. And today we've definitely got a paper that fits the bill.
Today we are serving up a paper.
Oh, I like that. Serving up a paper.
You know, we got to keep it fresh, right? So this paper tackles a problem that's as complex as it is relevant. You know, something we can all relate to in our daily lives. And it's called the multi-agent moving target traveling salesman problem.
MAMTTSP for short.
Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast.
It's a mouthful, but it really captures the essence of the challenge.
It really does. Essentially, we're talking about figuring out the most efficient way to get multiple agents, think robots, drones, self-driving cars, you name it, to visit multiple targets. But here's the catch. Those targets are constantly on the move. It's like a superpowered delivery service, but instead of just streets and traffic.
We're dealing with a whole swarm of agents navigating a dynamic environment.
Exactly. In this paper, a mixed integer conic program for the multi-agent moving target traveling salesman problem offers a fascinating new approach to solving it.
It really does.
It's kind of like, imagine those delivery drones we were talking about. But instead of just following a preset route, they can adapt on the fly to avoid obstacles, traffic, all that jazz.
It's a problem with a lot of real-world implications, and this paper introduces a solution that is significantly faster and more accurate than previous approaches.
So we're talking about a real breakthrough here.
I think it's safe to say that, yes.
Now, I know you're the expert here, so I'm going to tap into your knowledge. For those of us who aren't math whizzes, can you break down what an MICP is and why it's so important in this context?
Sure. So an MICP, or mixed integer conic program. Well, imagine you have this super detailed route planner, right? One that not only considers distances, but also all sorts of timing constraints.
So like a regular GPS on steroids.
Yeah, something like that, but with a lot more brain power. Because each target in this scenario has a specific window of time when it can be visited.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about getting there. It's about getting there at the right time.
Exactly. And those windows are constantly shifting as the targets move. An MICP is a mathematical framework that can handle all of that complexity and find the best possible solution.
So instead of a regular GPS that just gives you the shortest route, this is like having a system that can predict where the traffic will be and adjust your route on the fly.
That's a great analogy.
I try.
And what's really exciting about this paper is that they've found a way to make MICPs work much faster for this particular problem.
So they've optimized the optimizer.
Precisely. They've leveraged this really clever mathematical trick called convex sets, which allows them to optimize routes much more efficiently.
Convex sets. Now, I vaguely remember that from my college math days. Can you give us a quick refresher on what those are and how they fit into this whole routing problem?
Sure. Imagine drawing a circle on a piece of paper, right? Any 2 points you pick within that circle can be connected by a straight line that stays entirely within the circle.
Okay, I'm following so far.
That's what makes it a convex set. Now picture a star shape. You can't always draw a straight line between 2 points within the star without going outside of the shape, making it non-convex.
Ah, got it. So circle's good, star's bad, at least when it comes to optimization.
You got it. This property of convex sets is really helpful for optimization because it allows algorithms to find solutions much faster.
So in this case, the researchers are using convex sets to define the areas where the targets could be moving.
Precisely. They use this concept to create something called a graph of convex sets, which you can visualize as a network of bubbles.
Okay, I like bubbles.
Where each bubble represents a possible location for a target and the possible movements of an agent.
So it's like each bubble is a little world of possibilities for the agents to explore.
That's a great way to put it. The algorithm then has to navigate this network, finding the most efficient path through the bubbles, while staying within all those tricky time constraints.
It sounds like they're connecting the dots, but instead of dots, we have these complex convex sets, representing all the possible locations and movements.
That's an excellent way to visualize it. And what's remarkable is that by using this new formulation with convex sets, they have achieved some pretty impressive results.
Oh, I bet. Spill the tea.
Well, they compared their method to the existing standard, the go-to approach for this type of problem, and found that their approach is up to 100 times faster.
Wow, that's a serious speed boost.
It is. Not only that, but it also provides a solution that's incredibly close to the optimal one.
So it's not just finding a good solution quickly. It's finding a solution that's incredibly close to the absolute best possible route.
You nailed it.
Now that's what I call a breakthrough.
It really is. And I think this is where we start to see the potential of this research to revolutionize industries that rely on efficient routing.
Give me some examples. I'm all ears.
Okay, imagine a fleet of drones coordinating deliveries in a bustling city, minimizing time and fuel consumption, all thanks to this new approach.
So we're talking about like a future where packages arrive at our doorstep in record time.
Exactly, and with minimal environmental impact.
That's amazing. It's fascinating how a seemingly abstract mathematical concept like convex sets can have such profound real-world applications. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think it would be helpful to step back a bit and look at how we got here.
You're right, a little bit of historical context can really help us appreciate the significance of this breakthrough.
So what's the history of this problem? And how has the research evolved over time?
Well, the roots of the traveling salesman problem, even without the moving targets, go way back. It's been a classic problem in mathematics and computer science for decades.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that one. Something about finding the shortest route to visit a bunch of cities, right?
Exactly. It's a deceptively simple problem to state, but incredibly difficult to solve perfectly, especially as the number of cities grows.
So how does the moving target twist change things?
Well, it adds a whole new layer of complexity. Because now, not only do you have to figure out the optimal order in which to visit the targets, but you also have to account for their movements and time windows.
It's like trying to hit a moving target, literally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the earliest research specifically addressing the MTTSP didn't really emerge until the late 1990s and early 2000s.
So this is a relatively new area of research.
Relatively, yes. Initially, researchers tackled simpler scenarios, like targets moving along predictable straight lines.
That makes sense. Start with the basics before diving into the more complex stuff.
Exactly. A lot of the early approaches involved using heuristics, essentially educated guesses or rules of thumb to get decent solutions.
Ah, so those early attempts were like trying to navigate with a paper map and a compass.
A perfect analogy.
You could get a general sense of direction, but it wasn't always the most accurate or efficient way to get there.
Precisely. And there was no guarantee that the solutions they found were anywhere close to the best possible route.
Okay, so how did things progress from there?
Things began to change when researchers realized they could frame the MTTSP as a mixed integer program.
So they found a way to translate this messy real-world problem into the neat language of mathematics.
You got it.
That must have been a game changer.
It was. And that opened up the door to using powerful optimization solvers, the kind that could actually find provably optimal or near optimal solutions.
Okay, so by putting it into mathematical terms, they could bring in the heavy machinery of optimization to really crack the problem.
Precisely. And over the past decade or so, researchers have been refining these mixed integer programming formulations, making them more efficient and capable of handling more complex scenarios.
So it's been a steady march of progress.
You could say that, yes. Each new paper builds upon the previous ones, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And this paper we're discussing today is the latest and greatest in that lineage.
It is. This paper builds on all of that previous work and takes it a significant step further.
It's amazing to see how this field has evolved from those early heuristic approaches to these sophisticated algorithms that can handle complex scenarios with impressive speed and accuracy. But even with all this progress, there's always more to explore, right?
Always. The world of AI is constantly evolving. There's always something new to discover, new challenges to tackle.
And speaking of new challenges, you mentioned something about novel notions earlier. What kind of out-of-the-box research ideas did this paper spark for you?
Well, one thing that really struck me as I was reading this paper was how it focuses on optimizing pre-planned routes. And it got me thinking, what if we could develop a system where the agents are more independent and adaptive?
Ooh, that's interesting. So instead of relying on a preset plan, the agents would be constantly learning and adapting on the fly.
Exactly. Imagine a decentralized system where agents learn and adjust their routes in real time as the targets move and new information becomes available.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. Walk me through it. What would that look like in practice?
Okay, think of a network of self-driving cars.
Like a fleet of autonomous taxis.
Yeah, or even delivery vehicles. They could be communicating with each other, sharing information about traffic patterns, road closures, or new delivery requests, and constantly optimizing their routes to minimize delays and maximize efficiency.
It'd be like a hive mind for delivery vehicles.
Exactly.
But what about the potential benefits of such a system?
Well, increased efficiency and resilience are the obvious ones.
I could see that.
Imagine a delivery system that can automatically reroute vehicles around accidents or traffic jams.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
No more waiting around for packages that are stuck in traffic.
Right. And you could also potentially achieve significant fuel savings by optimizing routes in real time to avoid congestion.
So it's good for the environment, too.
Absolutely.
That all sounds great, but surely there are challenges in developing such a system. I mean, we're talking about autonomous vehicles making decisions in real time. That seems pretty complex.
Oh, absolutely. Safety is paramount. You'd need incredibly robust algorithms that can guarantee collision avoidance in a dynamic environment where vehicles are constantly adjusting their paths.
Yeah, I can see that being a major hurdle.
And then there's the question of scalability. How do you design a system that can handle hundreds or even thousands of agents interacting with each other in a complex, dynamic environment?
That's a lot of moving parts, literally and figuratively.
It is. And it's not just about technical challenges. There are also ethical considerations to take into account.
Ah, yes, the ethics of AI. Always a hot topic.
Indeed. For instance, if the system is constantly optimizing for efficiency, could it lead to certain areas being underserved, perhaps those that are harder to reach or less profitable?
That's a very important point. We don't want to create a system that exacerbates existing inequalities.
Exactly. You'd have to build mechanisms into the system to ensure that all areas receive adequate service, even if it means slightly sacrificing overall efficiency.
So it's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
It sounds like this hypothetical research idea opens up a whole new can of worms, both in terms of potential benefits and challenges.
It definitely does. And that's what makes it so exciting.
I'm curious, are there any other research avenues that you see branching out from this work?
Absolutely. We've talked about a decentralized system, but what if we take that a step further and introduce the concept of learning?
Learning. Intriguing. Tell me more.
Imagine a system where the agents themselves can learn and adapt their strategies over time, not just react to pre-programmed instructions.
So instead of relying on a central hub to tell them what to do, they'd be learning from their own experiences and from each other.
Precisely. It's a concept called multi-agent reinforcement learning.
Multi-agent reinforcement learning.
The agents would be rewarded for completing deliveries efficiently and penalized for delays or collisions. Over time, they would learn to navigate their environment and coordinate with each other to optimize the overall performance of the system.
So it'd be like training a team of self-driving delivery drivers, but they're constantly learning and improving their routes based on their experiences.
Exactly. Think of a fleet of autonomous vehicles that can learn the nuances of a city's traffic patterns and coordinate their movements to minimize congestion and delivery times.
It'd be like a self-organizing transportation system, constantly adapting and optimizing.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a mind-blowing concept. But let's be realistic. What about the practical challenges of implementing such a system?
Well, one major challenge, aside from the safety concerns we already touched upon, is the complexity of the learning process.
Yeah, teaching machines to learn is no easy feat.
It's not. We're talking about a large number of agents, each with its own set of sensors and actions, interacting in a complex and ever-changing environment, developing algorithms that can handle that level of complexity, and ensure that the agents learn effectively and safely is a massive undertaking.
It sounds like multi-agent reinforcement learning is still in its early stages, at least when it comes to real-world applications like this.
It is, but that's what makes it such a fascinating area of research.
The potential seems enormous. Before we move on, do you have any more novel notions you'd like to share?
I do, actually. I have one more that might pique your interest. We've talked about routing physical objects, but what about routing something intangible, like information?
Whoa, that's an interesting thought. Routing information, how would that even work?
Imagine a system that uses these same routing algorithms to optimize the flow of information within a social network.
So instead of delivery trucks or drones, we're talking about memes, news articles, or even political campaigns spreading through the network.
Exactly, and the goal wouldn't be to control the content itself, but to optimize its dissemination based on certain criteria.
I see, so it's like shaping the flow of information rather than dictating the message.
Precisely. Think of an AI that can analyze the structure of a social network, identify key influencers, and then optimize the paths by which information travels through the network.
So in a way, it's like targeted advertising. But instead of selling products, we're promoting something else,
Mm.
like public health information or accurate news.
You got it.
Now, hold on a second. That sounds a bit like manipulating people's opinions or controlling the narrative. Isn't there a risk that this kind of technology could be misused, perhaps for propaganda or censorship?
You're absolutely right to raise those concerns. That's the big ethical dilemma with any technology that can influence the flow of information. You could easily imagine authoritarian regimes using this to control the narrative and silence dissent, or corporations using it to manipulate consumer behavior.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
It's crucial to consider these risks.
It's a classic double-edged sword scenario. The potential benefits are huge,
Mm.
but so are the potential risks. This brings us back to the importance of ethical considerations in AI research and development.
Absolutely. We need to have open and honest conversations about the potential impact of these technologies and develop safeguards to ensure they're used responsibly and ethically.
Well said. But before we get too serious, I want to circle back to the paper itself. We've covered a lot of ground today, but I want to make sure our listeners have a clear takeaway. What would you say is the most significant contribution of this research?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that this new MICP formulation, with its clever use of convex sets, offers a major leap forward in terms of efficiency and accuracy for solving the MAMTTSP.
So it's a real game changer in the field of optimization and routing.
Exactly.
And for those of you who want to delve deeper into the technical details, remember, the link to the full paper is in the show notes.
Always a good reminder. We encourage everyone to check it out.
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of Talk Tensors. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the intricacies of the MAMTTSP to the potential and perils of AI-powered routing systems.
It's been a fascinating discussion.
As always, we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on this research? What other novel notions did it spark for you? Share your insights in the comments section below.
We love hearing your perspectives and engaging in further discussions.
Until next time, keep exploring the frontiers of machine learning.
Yeah.
And may your learning algorithms always converge optimally.
Cheers to that. I think that's a great place to pause for now.
Yeah, we've definitely ventured into some pretty deep territory here.
Yeah.
But before we wrap things up completely, I want to make sure we tie everything back to this amazing paper we've been discussing.
Sounds good to me.
So we've talked a lot about the potential applications of this research and some pretty wild hypothetical scenarios. But for our listeners who are eager to dive into the nitty-gritty of this paper, what would you say are the key takeaways?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that this paper introduces a new way of solving the MAMTTSP. And it's not just a small improvement. This new method is significantly faster and more accurate than anything that's come before.
So it's a real breakthrough in the field.
Absolutely. And I think the key to their success lies in this clever use of convex sets.
Ah, yes, those bubbles we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. By using convex sets to represent the possible locations of the targets, the researchers were able to simplify the problem and make it much easier to solve.
So it's like they found a shortcut through all the mathematical complexity.
You could say that, yes. They found a way to cut through the noise and get to the heart of the problem.
And that's what allowed them to achieve such impressive results.
Precisely.
I'm curious, now that we have this new, more efficient method for solving the MAMTTSP, what kind of real-world applications do you see it being used for?
Oh, the possibilities are endless. We've already touched on some of them, like delivery drones and autonomous vehicles. But I think this research could also have a huge impact on fields like logistics, robotics, and even search and rescue operations.
Search and rescue, that's interesting. How would this apply to something like that?
Well, imagine a scenario where you have a team of drones or robots searching for survivors after a natural disaster. These agents need to coordinate their movements to cover as much ground as possible, while also accounting for the fact that the situation is constantly changing.
So the targets, in this case, the survivors, are moving.
Exactly. And their locations might be unknown or uncertain. This is where the MAMTTSP comes in. By using this new method to optimize the search paths of the agents, we could potentially save more lives.
Wow, that's a powerful application.
It is, and it really highlights the potential of this research to make a real difference in the world.
It's amazing to think that a seemingly abstract mathematical problem can have such profound real-world implications.
I know, it's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today. Before we sign off, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just one final thought. As we continue to develop more advanced AI systems, it's important to remember that with great power comes great responsibility.
A Spider-Man reference. Nice.
I couldn't resist. But
Yeah.
seriously, we need to make sure that these technologies are used for good and that we're always considering the ethical implications of our work.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up.
Sounds good to me.
I couldn't agree more. It's a responsibility we all share, you know.
Definitely.
Well, I think this has been another fantastic deep dive into the world of machine learning research. We've really explored some fascinating ideas today.
We have.
And as always, we want to hear from you, our listeners. What are your thoughts on this paper? What other novel notions did it spark for you?
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
We love hearing your perspectives and, engaging in further discussions. So until next time, keep exploring the frontiers of machine learning.
And may your learning algorithms always converge optimally.
Cheers to that.
Yeah.